for art. And one of the things that I was dealing with is trying to figure things out. Why did I, I'm in grad school for art. I've been in art school before, of course, undergrad at Central State University in Ohio. It's a historical Black college, and I did a lot of art there. But when I got to grad school later on in life, I was thinking like, well, I still want to make art, but I didn't really know how. Um, I wanted to talk about art in a way that would make people understand why I was making certain things. And a lot of the time I was making art that had like kind of abstract art, didn't really have any figures or anything because I did figures back in undergrad. So I didn't want to continue on doing that work. So I was talking to an old professor, and he told me that I need to make art that like makes sense to me. Don't worry about everybody else. Everybody will, pick it up later, but make art that makes sense to you. I was dealing with identity issues and everything. So I started talking about my experience in undergrad and at a historical Black college. One of the things that I wanted to do was join a sorority. And if you ever joined any organization, especially sororities, frats, and things like that, there's a lot of, they're looking at how you are, your personality, your looks, and everything. And I was interested in knowing about one of the historical Black sororities. And when I went this cookout, the brown paper bag test actually happened to me. And I didn't know at the time what the brown paper bag test was. So what the brown paper bag test was, it was done in the early 1900s. And it basically was a test that was an unscientific test that was kind of given by other African Americans to kind of assess if their skin color was light enough to pass or get privileges. So the lighter your skin color was, if you were lighter than brown paper bag, you kind of got into the best churches, the best grocery stores, the best universities. You got all these privileges. If you were darker, it was, if you were darker than the brown paper bag, you wasn't even coming through the door. So this kind of started happening more frequently after emancipation, that the brown paper bag test was used. And it's funny because when I was contacted about this, I had already had read Britt Bennett's book, and I found it fascinating because it was all about survival. For me, that's how I took it. Colorism, it's a very, very ugly uh, ideology about racism and color. But if you think of it, of the people in the past, they used it for survival. So if you read the Vanishing Half, it was one sister was using it for survival. And I think that's how colorism has lasted for so long, because some people see it as a way for them to survive or have a better life than the life that would have been posed on them if they actually lived in the eyes of other people, of the eyes of how other people see them. So I say all that to say, so I started making the brown paper bags from that experience. And I made a few of them and I put them on, I think it was Facebook at the time. I put a few of them on there just showcasing people that I drew, people that I knew, threw them on bags. And there's probably like maybe 10 of them at the time. And there was a museum in Indonesia that was very interested in them. So my university I was at, they sent the bags to Indonesia for this show. And one of the comments that was made was they didn't know in Indonesia that, African Americans went through that same kind of colorism situation where, a lighter skin meant all these opportunities, and people still thought that if you had light skin that you can, get certain things. And, there's skin bleaching and all that comments that were coming to me. And I said, you know what? I never thought of colorism like that because growing up, I'm the lightest in my family. Growing up, I always wanted darker skin. And it's weird because when I did all these interviews with the women that I did the brown paper bags of, uh, by now there's probably, brown paper bags, I probably have close to maybe 2 or 3 thousand brown paper bags at this point. But the women that I did brown paper bags from were women that I either personally knew or it was women that I met and asked them about their story. Tell me about your story. Tell me, and their stories that they gave me were either stories, of course, of colorism, like, have you ever thought that you didn't fit in? Have you ever thought that if your skin was lighter or darker, did you ever think that you didn't get, certain advantages because of the way you look? So I asked different questions and I got these, these crazy responses that some of them was responses that I, felt growing up, and some of them was stuff that I never experienced before. And it was very interesting. Also, I got out of it was I got to know like skin colors. Now, when I talk about skin colors, I'm talking about like all ranges of skin colors and skin, people who have like eczema or like things, different things with skin. It was weird because this was all, I say all this, but this was all just for grad school and me drawing pictures, and all this stuff came out of it. And it was just really cool how things kind of fell out of it. From doing these interviews and these talks and doing this artwork. And each and every bag that I did, it started getting bigger and bigger. Like I said, there's probably 3,000 bags. I quit counting after 1,000. I really did. But they're very interesting to see how people react to them. One of the other parts of the brown paper bags is not just the portraits I did with charcoal and chalk pastels, but there's also the words. So where the words came from was also with my research. The words came from research that I did, books that I read, and just comments that you see on social media and everything. So it went from the earliest name that was called a black skin color when the first slave got to America, all the way to modern times, present day. So it's like you got comments like to talk about black skin color is called like ink dots. Ink. I remember reading some kind of little quote in this little history book that kind of said like one of the people who was auctioning off slaves was telling somebody like, don't put white on them because you don't want that black skin that gets the white dirty on their clothes, so you won't be able to sell them. They'll look too dirty. Or it was something weird like that. But that's what they thought back then. And it was really interesting to see all these names that now we use, and we use them thinking they're very endearing, like brown skin. Or I remember saying to somebody that had a baby, it was like, oh, it's a cute little, look at your little brown skin, you're so cute. And it's endearing, but it's very demeaning calling somebody that. So from time to time I get caught up and say things that probably I shouldn't say when I talk about skin color, like, oh, well, she's light skinned, so she's gonna be all right. And then I think to myself, like, oh man, I do all this research on colorism, I fall right into it. But it's kind of one of those things that I grew up with for so long that I have to catch myself and make sure that I don't say offensive things, and people won't say anything. It'll hurt, but it's one of those hurts that you heard it so many times that you just start accepting it and not like reacting to it. So I still have those kind of moments now. But yeah, the brown paper bags is right now, that installation is the word bags that has all the words that talk about brown skin, or yeah, brown skin and dark skin and light skin. There's some words that's pretty hard to take that has I don't know if I sent all the words down or down to you guys, but there were some words that had like house slave, pickaninny, things like that that got called specifically Black women, and maybe just not Black people in general. So I picked specific words that dealt with like Black women and their skin color. So yeah, it's turning out to be a very, very big installation that I thought would die off once I graduated from grad school, but no, it's still making its rounds. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Um, so I did the brown paper bags, and I also, along with the brown paper bags, I also added boxes to it. So if you go to my website, you'll see like boxes with women's faces on it. Some women I didn't put on bags. Some women's story I end up putting on boxes. So just a regular moving box. I put the woman's portrait on it and all the stories that she told me. Not so much the words that was used to talk about her or her body type or her hair texture, but just like things that her family told her growing up or things she heard growing up about herself that, wasn't necessarily didn't help her, but it was said to her that kind of bothered her and she carried it along with her. So the bigger the box, the more baggage she grew up with. So I had women from, of course, I had infant boxes. So there's little tiny boxes of babies. And there's boxes that are like really big moving boxes. The really big ones are the older women that I think the oldest woman that was there was probably in her late 80s. One of the interesting things that I want to share with you that she said, and shocked me. Um, it shocked me, and I'm bringing it up because it correlates to the book, The Vanishing Half. Is she told me how she's a dark skinned Black woman, and she said, growing up, I grew up in the South, and my mother told me you can't have kids or marry a dark skinned man. You have to find somebody light skinned, or you need to find someone white because your babies are going to come out to her. And she said, all her life, she had this embedded in her head. And she ended up marrying her husband, who just happened to be white. And she said, and she ended up having 3 kids. She said, my first baby, I just knew my mother would be excited because her first baby was coming and her first baby was going to be light and she couldn't wait for this first baby to come. And she said her first baby came out brown and so did the other 2. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, because you never know. She said, her husband, he didn't know. You don't know, who his relative was. He may have had, an African American, relative. You don't know. But she said she was dead set on that. And her mother was like, well, I don't know. I don't know why your babies are so dark. And she said it hurt her. She also told me about, bathing in bleach when she was younger and thinking that if she, bathed in bleach, her skin would get lighter. Like, those are the kind of stories that people share with me. And I was just like, wow, I would never take it that far, but that was her survival technique that her mother taught her. And it's things like that that I hear. And I also hear from the other direction too, where there's, African American women who are like really light and can pass and say, in some aspects, I pass and I don't say anything to anybody and comments get made around me and I don't say anything because I don't want, part of it I took from the conversation was part of it. She didn't want to offend the person that was talking to her. And the other part of it is like she wanted the person to continue on talking so she can see how ignorant they were. That's how I took it. But she, that particular woman said she always wanted to be, darker and fit in. And it was always a comment about her skin, and you know, she could never outrun it. She could never outrun it. And I think it goes both ways when it comes to, you know, skin color. It goes both ways. You're never, it's just like, you know, it's just like you always want what you don't have or can't have. And I definitely get it. But one of the things that I like I said in this book was the whole survival, how one chose to go one way and one chose to go the other. Uh, as far as I don't want to give a book away for those who haven't read it, I don't want to give it away. But it's very interesting on I hear different tactics of how people grew up and trying to survive, because there is a weird caste system in the Black community. Um, I never really paid that close attention to it until I started doing research on it. But there is a weird caste system, and there has always been this veil that nobody really, we know it exists, but we don't say anything. And like one of the weird things that the research that I picked up on when I was doing all this, and it's crazy, and I did this much research when I was just drawing brown paper bags, but I got really into it, and my thesis paper turned out really, my thesis dissertation turned out really well, better than I expected. But I got really into it because I learned a lot from it. And it was like skin color, when colorism, it's not only skin color, it's education, it's how you carry yourself, it's who you know, it's a lot of little weird ins and outs. And it was one aspect of it, I want to say, is it Our Kind of People? I can't remember what book it was. I want to say it's called Our Kind of People. I can't remember who wrote that right now. I think it's that book. One of the books that I was researching at the time I was doing my thesis was, they were talking about, even if there was, let's say, a man that was dark skinned, if he had money, he can bypass the brown paper bag. If he had money, he could bypass it because he can get him a light-skinned woman, and you know, her looks would give him a leverage with his money, and her looks would get him a leverage where it didn't matter what his skin color was. And it's very interesting, because I kind of had this discussion with younger generation of students that I had that was college level, and we were talking about it, and they were saying, well, that's just like nowadays. If you got money, you have these luxuries, like the skin color doesn't matter, but it helps. And they really, you know, believe that now. You can see how they lighten people's skin on magazines, or, you know, it's just, it doesn't have to be skin color. They make you, you know, you're big, they make you look thin. It's like things like that. It's just very interesting on how people perceive this is the way the world will give me these certain advantages if I look a certain way. And that was the whole concept around the brown paper bag, showing pretty much these women that I interviewed. And some of them didn't look exactly like the brown paper bag. What I mean by that is not their actual image. Some of them I made lighter, and some of them I made darker. So if it was somebody that said, always wanted darker skin, I asked them, can I make you darker in this bag? Oh yeah, sure. And they see it and they're like, oh, okay. And sometimes it goes over well, sometimes it doesn't, but they like the fact that they're able to see that. And I did that because I wanted to show how a simple brown paper bag can change the dynamics on how women, Black women, seen themselves. Because the brown paper bag was like, that was like God at one point, to see if you can get certain advantages. And you know, from what I hear and the research that I did, that it supposedly stopped the brown paper bag. It was secretly still being done in the 80s. Not sure about it, because like I said, I had somebody pull it on me in the early 2000s. But it was an older person. So, but it's very interesting on when I did it started working on it in 2016, and I'm talking about the artwork till now. It kind of came full circle, because when I started doing the colorism and started talking about it and doing research on it, nobody knew what I was talking about, or if they knew what I was talking about, they're like, it's not a big deal. When Black Lives Matters and things like this started happening in the world, it started kind of circling the back around, and people started showing more interest in uh, colorism and why people think of these ideologies as truth, and the brown paper bag test, and where did all this come from. And I always say to people, I don't like talking racism with people, because I haven't yet mastered colorism. If I can't talk to other African Americans about privileges and disadvantages within my own race, I can't sit up here and argue with somebody outside about things. Like, I can do it, but I need to grapple with what's going on. It's like, before I talk about anybody else's house being dirty, I need to clean up my own house, kind of thing. So, but that's pretty much where the idea in the brown paper bag and all that came from. I know I feel like I did a lot of talking, and I hope there was a lot of understanding in it. There was one other thing that I wanted to bring. Oh, yes. Also, on the website, it went along with the brown paper bags in the boxes, is also the back of the head drawings. Another thing that came out of the colorism was hairstyle discrimination, the texture of a woman's hair. As a kid, I remember my grandmother, my mom's mom, always talking about, like, kids' hair. I remember being, young and at a playground, and you would hear, like, women talk. And if there was a kid that was very light, to look like they passed, they didn't look black, they would look at the kid's hair and say, oh, look at the texture. Yeah, that kid got black in them, because the texture of that hair is as we used to say, nappy, or that texture of their hair is really kinky. So somebody in that family is black, and it would always be that kind of conversation. So I wanted to do drawings of women, not necessarily black women, but drawings of women, and do the back of their heads, a portrait, but from the opposite direction. Instead of seeing the face, you see in the back of the head. The one that I showcase all the time, if you look on my website, it's called Hair Identity Number One. And I always ask people, when it's shown, I always ask people, tell me about this woman. Tell me, looking at the back of her head, looking at the hairstyle, looking at the texture of her hair, tell me what you think she is and what she does for a living. And they always say, oh, well, her hair, her hair is a little kinky. She had it in 2 cornrow braids in the back of her hair. She's probably in her mid 40s, maybe late 40s, probably a black woman, probably works at a bank. I heard all kinds of crazy stories that they give me around just the back of somebody's head. And I always tell them, like, well, no, it's not a black woman. It was a Jewish woman from Johnstown, PA. And I didn't know what she did for a living. But when I met her, I was hanging a show, had nothing to do with colorism. I was hanging a show, and I seen her hair. And I said, you have some thick hair. Can I take a picture of your hair? And I was obsessed with it. So I took a picture of it, and I said, I just want to draw the back of your head. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I really liked it. And I started sketching it out, and it hit me. I want this experience for other people to have to not only look at the brown paper bags to see if these women that's drawn on the brown paper bags, if they're light enough or dark enough to get privileges or not get privileges. I wanted people to see in the boxes that you see when you look at my website, in the Colorism Project, the boxes, they had women's faces on it, and you read their comments about how they looked and everything. And I wanted to put them back in the head. So the whole idea of the Colorism Project that I did was basically to make people have to sit back and make judgments to their self, but also realize how ridiculous the ideology of colorism really is. And then once you think about kind of the ridiculousness of it and start reading the stories of the boxes that have the women's quotes and little sayings and stuff on it, you realize that people was using it as this is how they survive. Like, this is a survival tactic. I have to use, let's say, I have to use my light skin to pass so I can have a better life, because this is the way I think. This is the way I was taught. And, you know, living in America, you know, and there's a little bit of caste, there's a little bit of a caste system, so there's a little bit of truth in it, that people really think like that. It's not, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's correct, but if it's correct in people's thinking that this is the way that their world works, I stopped arguing about that a long time ago with people. Like, this is the way you think, and you can survive, and you can sleep at night. Go ahead and do that. But it's been very interesting. It's been really a roller coaster, and I was terrified to send the brown paper bags because I didn't know the reception that I would get. I always do this. Anytime I send the bags out somewhere to somebody, no matter where it's being hung at, I always get terrified because I don't know how people are going to react or perceive the bags, especially when they have the colorism words next to it. There has been a couple of controversial moments. One of the moments is basically there was a woman that I drew her face, and I think next to her bag it said house slave or something like that, and she got really angry about that. And I said, no, it's just the way it was set up. There was no particular reason. So sometimes it's things like that. And sometimes when my work gets shown, my colorism work particularly gets shown, older generations of African Americans get a little upset about it because they feel like it's unnecessary to dig that kind of trauma up. But once again, you have to talk through it, and you have to hear other people's experience and share that experience with people to kind of start working through it collectively. Never, my theory is I'm never going to, my blues, I need to share my blues with everybody, because somebody will be able to tell me something and help them get through something like mine or something kind of like mine, my story to kind of help me through. So you never want to be alone. And that's why I made this work, because I wanted people to actually see other people, what other people go through, specifically Black women, the trauma of having to think about your skin color, your hair texture, your you know, your built, all these different things, that your facial features, all these things that you deal with when you just walk out your door in the morning. So that was one of the things that I was really, you know, interested in making artwork and talking about. Now I'm trying to get away from the brown paper bags, but it seems like I'm still making them after all this time. So
actually, I wanted to share my screen because I wanted to give people the opportunity to look at the website and kind of see the stuff that you were referencing. So let me share that. Okay, so we can see this. So this is actually the website, artbyaaj.com. And then over here, you're just going to click on the Colorism Project. And then so you can see. So if you have been to our library and seen it, you will see that we have a lot of these paper bags being showcased. So I'm just going to scroll down. And then actually, if you can just kind of, so this is hair identity. Yes. So this is what she was talking about a little bit earlier.
So this is the hair identity one that I did. And like I said, I wanted to not do a regular portrait. This is all charcoal. that picture right there to the left is the one that everybody always say, oh, she's probably in her 40s and she's African American. And I said, no, she's a Jewish woman from Johnstown, PA. And I was so enthralled with her hair. And when she told me a brief story, and she says, I always hated my hair. I always hated my hair. I always wanted to be, straight and silky. And she was like, I just got this bad braided hair. And I said, that's hilarious that everybody has like these things that they want. And she wants straight hair. And I said, one day I will draw your hair straight, but today I need to get it the way it is now because I love it now. So these are just different, hairstyles of women that I just wanted to shoot the back of their head. Like I took a picture of that because a lot of things, it's so funny that I have to bring this up because a lot of people are like, I wonder how long did those people sit for? And I said, this ain't back in the day where you got a model sit for you forever. You know how much it's going to cost to have a model sit there for you that long? It's too long. So, you're lucky. I'll keep them for a little while, but you're lucky enough to have them for maybe, if you get them for an hour, that's really good. But I usually just take very detailed pictures and go off of that.
Then you said you did this charcoal?
This is charcoal, and these is on a wooden panel.
Okay. Yeah, those are beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I just want to show, the brown paper bag test. So this is what we have here at the librry.
You got new bags though. So
yes.
You got bags that nobody has ever seen before. So
you got fancy bags. Yes. So they're beautiful. So if you haven't seen them yet, they're going to be there up through February 24th. And it's just really striking. It's really moving when you go in there and look at these. So I just wanted to do a quick preview of these for everyone. And then if you wanted to talk a little bit, let's go back about the boxes. So what are these?
So the boxes is Stop Putting Me in a Box. Mm-hmm. And like I briefly talked about it, but these boxes were women. At one point I said, I'm not drawing another brown paper bag. I'm just not going to do it. So I thought about the idea of putting women on boxes. The bigger the box, the more, I guess I could say the more colorism or discrimination they had about their looks, not just their skin color, but their looks in general. So on some of the boxes, it was like, you look so unique, or your skin is so dark. What part of Africa are you from? And, things like that. And most of the comments that I asked them to give me were comments that other African Americans said to them.
Oh, okay.
So the smaller the boxes were like the baby boxes. So the infant, I got like a newborn. And one of the women said when her baby was born, her mother came into the delivery room and said, oh my God, the baby is just so dark. But the hair is just so straight. I hope this baby's hair stays straight like this. And it's things like that get sad. And she said her mother didn't even forget the baby being cute, forget,
right.
It was, I wonder how dark the baby's going to be. So it says your skin is so dark. One of the things one of the little girls said, they called me nappy head at school when she got her hair done. It was another little Black girl, she said, told her hair was nappy. Or, I heard stories like I have right there, I only date dark-skinned girls. So it's things like that get said to women. And I get it from, of course, I said newborns. Of course, newborns wasn't telling me their story. But I tried to do 6-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go all the way up to 100 years old. I got somebody in their late 90s, but I did a brown paper bag on them and not the box. Because she wasn't around for me to do the box at that time. But I did get a bag of her done. And it's little quotes and everything that I put on the box. Now, inside of the box are the brown paper bags. that has more quotes and sayings and stuff that was said to them. So you see that some of the boxes are open, there's quotes, and there's also like the words dark skin, light skin, anything that they were ever called is all stuffed in those boxes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, that's why I said there's like 3,000 and something bags. There's a lot. I put a lot of work into it, and I'm here to tell everybody, I did not think anybody would see this other than the people in Indiana, PA. I wanted to do
so
it just
interesting, right?
yeah, that was it.
So I thought it was interesting that you had said back when you were making this in what, 2016,
Yes.
that it was people weren't talking about colorism at all.
No.
And I will say, I think maybe it's only been maybe in the past year, and it's literally only because of I'm only starting to know about it because of a discussion that I'm sort of embarrassed to admit. It's from my reality TV watching, because I watched The Real Housewives.
I watched Don't as well.
So they are talking. So The Real Housewives of Potomac is a Black cast, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so they started talking about colorism there in the ways that some of the darker skinned women are treated as villains, and they're doing the exact same thing as the lighter skinned women. And it wasn't until that discourse started that I was like, oh, this is kind of this. Yeah. You can see this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It starts to be colorism is used as a survival and excuse to do certain things. And you really see it on reality TV, because it's like, well, they she's jealous of me because she's dark skinned. That's why she's acting like that. Or I can do this because I'm light skinned and pretty, and I get these privileges. Like I seen a few episodes and I'm like, wait now, right. Y'all really just really bold with it now, like
right,
very bold with it. And it's talked about more now, but when I started this, nobody knew what I was talking about, like at all. And I went from in grad school, I actually got hired on my 3rd year of grad school as a professor. So I'm doing my work plus teaching. Okay. And I'm trying to explain to people what I'm doing, and they're like, but why are you talking about this? It wasn't until the work was done and they were like, oh, I get what you're doing now. So,
right. We have a program coming up, and for people online who might be interested in this, we have as part of this one book programming, it's in February. Gail Lukasek is a woman. It was not until she went on, I think it was a PBS genealogy thing. They were doing her genealogy on TV that she found out that her mother was an African-American woman. She had no idea. She then talked to her mom, and her mom was like, yes, I would prefer. She still wanted to keep it a secret because she had used it, as you have said, for survival techniques. And so she had just used it to pass, and then her kids grew up, never knew. And so it's so interesting the ways, and you can see it in the book too, that people are just using it. And for a lot of times it's a survival thing. It makes it easier for them to move about in the world. Right.
And in the book, if you see that they'll refer to like a dark, like I'm trying to remember, was it Desiree's husband? Desiree's husband was a dark-skinned man, and kinda, and I think the love interest after the husband was dark-skinned. Her mom was like, you gotta stay away from him. Yeah. And it was just really like, oh yeah, I read passing. Right. I seen it pop up on the thing. I read passing. I did not watch it on Netflix yet.
Yes, I just saw that. So that's a new, that's a film on Netflix that you guys, and I believe Jennifer, one of the people on here, she talked about the new Netflix film Passing. Which is
I do want to watch it. I'm gonna tell y'all, it takes a lot out of me to watch things like that and to read things. It takes a lot out of me, because if you read some of the stuff I read when doing like the research, it's funny because when I was doing the research, everybody was like, you're in school for art. You're getting your master's in fine arts. Why you digging this stuff
Right.
up? But I want to be thorough because I knew, and here's where the colorism and things come from. I knew that I had to be thorough because somebody was going to call me on the carpet. Because
Okay.
how dare I, being a Black woman, dig this stuff up and not know what I'm talking about. So I was uber paranoid. I wanted to dot my I's and cross my T's with it. But yeah, I dug deep in depth in it, and what is it called? Started getting into like what they did in Germany, and how the slaves, like before they were in Africa, and skin color, how they looked at it, because colorism always existed.
Mhm.
The issue was, if you were dark skinned, that means you worked outside. If you were light skinned, that means you had people working for you. It didn't mean anything other than that. But it wasn't until, America and this ideology of white and Black, and others, the other kind of thing, where things got kind of, how do you say it? It got wishy-washy. I'll use it like that. I can use better terminology, but I'll say it got wishy-washy when it starts talking about when everybody got here in this new world that we live in. Once the slaves and all that, and what section this person needs to go because this person's skin color was light enough to go to the grocery store and pass. Like the slave master can send this looks like a white woman into town, and she can find out information, and she comes back and she's a slave, but they don't know that. Or she can lie and say she's other. And other was anybody that came from like another country that can say, well, I'm not Black.
Mhm.
And it was just really weird. But once again, survival technique. It was a survival technique. So yeah, it's been a long road. I still can't believe I'm sitting up here talking about it now. I really thought this was gonna be over. Like I thought nobody would see the bags and it would be over. But yeah.
So you had mentioned that you are kind of trying to distance yourself a little bit away from this. Like you're like, all right, let's work on something else. Are you working on, are you trying to get into new things now?
I have been.
Yeah.
I've been I walked away from the brown paper bags probably 2019.
Okay.
I have been making other work. The bags stay there, like they just stay in the back somewhere. What I've been working on is kind of doing portraiture work
Mhm.
of African Americans, but doing it in a way that kind of takes away from skin color. So I've been doing like a silhouette, but a very detailed silhouette.
Okay.
So you don't know what color they are.
Right.
And using this, oh, I thought it was in the back of me. No, this is a whole different thing. But kind of using the background, a really colorful background, but doing a Black silhouette of everybody. I tried different techniques, but colorism always comes up. So I said, I was watching an interview and they had Eddie Murphy on. And one of the things he said, all the things that I've done in my life, when I die, my tombstone will have Donkey from Shrek. All the work that he has done. And I told my family, I said, I'm going to tell you what, I guarantee I probably won't be anything bigger than what I am now. But when I die, there's going to be a brown paper bag on my tombstone. Because these brown paper bags, no matter, I'm telling you, I'll put them in the back of the closet, never going to work on those ever again. I said that. You know how many bags I did this year alone? I literally, in the past 3 months, I've probably did 1,500.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's why I started laughing. And when you was like, oh, I was like, oh, I'll send you more bags. No
Right.
problem.
Okay, so when your art that you're doing now or that you have done since you've tried to kind of put this behind you, are you trying to get away from social commentary? Does it keep popping up no matter what you're trying to do?
It keeps popping up.
Yeah.
And I think it keeps popping up, and I allow it to pop up because it's actually me working through things, I believe.
Right.
And that's why I let it seep in. Now that I went from teaching college kids to last year teaching like 2nd through 8th grade, it's really an eye-opener on basically how little kids are and how they see things and how they relate to things. So I'm starting to think of different things to kind of do. So I have been doing like little girls, and one of the things that I did, it's on my website somewhere. One of the things that I did was I did this project. Was that in Johnstown or Indiana? I can't remember. It's been so long ago that I took little Black girls who live in communities that don't have a lot of Black people. And I took their portraits. And what I did, I said, I'm going to draw the portrait, and then you're going to come back and help me collage your dress. And you're going to take, we took brown paper bags and collaged them in a dress. And then they took magazines and clippings of words in magazines that they felt described them. And it's embedded in the dress, and it came out really beautiful. And I would like to go back to that, but I don't want to do little girls. I want to do little boys.
Oh, yeah.
I want to do little boys. One of the things that I keep saying, I don't see a lot of portraits of young Black men. I don't know what their story is. And everybody always asks, why don't you do brown paper bags with men on it? I've never been a Black man before. I don't know. Like, I can't relate. But I have so many young men that you know, I mentor and everything now because I work with younger kids that has these unique stories. And I know they wouldn't normally just say it, but I found a way to use art to kind of have these difficult conversations with grown-ups and kids that I can probably get them to speak through the art without them having to say anything.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming out and talking to us all tonight.
No problem,
It's been great.
No problem.
Ashley is kind of our, we're going to call her our virtual artist in residence for the program. She's also putting on 2 collage programs, one for teens and one for youth. So if you have anybody that would be interested in those, you can find those on our One Book website. And now we're going to open it up to, if you guys have any questions for Ashley, you can type them into the chat or into the Q&A. So we will stick around for a minute to see if anyone has any for her. And again, if you haven't seen the exhibit, make sure that you see it before it's gone, because it really is great. We have a guest book out, which we want people to share their feelings about the exhibit with us, and we like overwhelmingly has just gotten such positive reviews.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, everybody. Well, if there aren't any questions, we will let you go. Thank you so much to Ashley for coming out tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you to the rest of the patrons. I hope you all have a great night, and we will see you soon.
See ya.
Good night.